Hey guys, this is my first video, so I'm just going to apologise straight away and say this is really bad, then hopefully they'll just get better in the future. Today I'm going to look at how to do hand lettering. I've had a few requests on Instagram over the past few years, so I thought it would be a good first video to try and put together a tutorial for you that covers all the basics that you need to know. So there are really only two rules to hand lettering, and this is that you do thicker strokes as you go down and thinner strokes as you go up. Most of the time this is achieved by pressing harder on the pen as you go down to get a thicker line, and pressing lightly as you move the pen upwards to get a thinner one. This is a bit different when using the Crayola Super Tip, but I'll cover that later. I'm just going to add on a few arrows so that you can clearly see the difference between the downstrokes and the upstrokes. It's quite simple, it's a really easy thing to grasp, you just need a lot of practice at it before it comes natural. So you probably noticed as I was writing with the pens that there was quite a bit of difference in flexibility, and this is something that you'll experience with all brush pens that you purchase. I personally like pens that have a bit of flexibility but not a lot, like the Tombow one that I'm using here, but I also quite like the Ecoline pen as well, that has quite a lot of flexibility. So as you can see here, the Ecoline is extremely flexible, whilst the Crayola Super Tip is really not so much, but that's probably because it's a felt tip pen, not a brush pen, so that's just the difference there. So I'm just going to run through some of my top tips for hand lettering. Obviously you don't have to follow these to a letter, but they're just like my top tips personally. So number one is to go really slowly. As you get more practice, you'll be able to be quicker at it and you'll pick up speed, but to start with, just go slow and it'll be so much easier. My second tip is to separate out your strokes. So when doing a letter, do a downstroke, pick the pen up off the page, then do your upstroke and repeat. You could even try breaking letters down like I've done here, so that you can see when you should move your pen. This makes it much easier than trying to change how you've angled your pen when you're mid-letter, which can just get really messy. Sometimes with practice you can go straight through depending on which pen you're using, but to start with I find it really helpful to separate it all out. Sometimes with practice you can go straight through depending on which pen you're using, but to start with I find it really helpful to separate it all out. My third tip is to not aim for perfection, if that makes any sense at all. A lot of people try and follow exact fonts or handwritings, and whilst that's nice if you're looking for perfect calligraphy, I'm personally not, and I think it's nice to have little nuances in your lettering that just make it yours, because it's a bit like your handwriting. So I wouldn't try and aim for the perfect handwriting each time, make it a little bit different. So now I'm going to cover how you letter with the Crayola Super Tip. This is a bit different to the others as you need to change the angle of the pen rather than the pressure that you put on it. So as you can see here, the side of the pen is considerably thicker than the tip of the pen, which is why you use the side to do your downstrokes and the tip to do your upstroke. This difference in thickness means you end up changing the angle of the pen rather than the pressure that you're putting on it, which is something that you do have to get used to when writing with these, but I think it's pretty intuitive still. Once again, I'd recommend breaking up your letters so that you can easily see when you're doing the side of the pen and the tip of the pen, and going really slowly helps here too, as it gives you time to lift up the pen and readjust it in your hand rather than trying to fiddle with it when you're in the middle of writing. So that's pretty much the basics of hand lettering covered. I just wanted to leave you with a few ideas of styles before I ended this video, as it's really the styles that give you the nice fonts that you see on everyone's notes. One really simple one is just outlining your lettering in fine liner. This is especially easy if you're using a thicker pen like the Ecoline brush pen. You can also try doing capital letters. I quite like this style. I think it's personal preference. Some people do it, some people don't. I quite like it depending on what mood I'm into, but it's up to you. You can also try bouncy lettering, which is what I tend to do because I don't want to get really paranoid about keeping everything on the same line and at the same height. So you can change the height of the letters and you can change like the size of them, and it just gives it a bit more life than trying to write on the same line. You can also get some nice effects by doing different sizes of letters, but again, this is all just personal preference and you can play around with it and come up your own. Lastly, my number one tip is to just keep going, because at the end of the day, nobody's perfect on the first try, and the more you practice, the better that you'll get at it, and that's all there is to it really, is just practice, practice, practice until you find a style that you're comfortable with. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If it's something you enjoyed, I might put together more in the future. Just let me know in the comments or on Instagram, and let me know if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see in the future too.